Hello and welcome to the ScrapbookPal's YouTube channel. My name is Theary and today I am sharing a card that I created using the adorable stamp set from Altenew called Dainty Flowers. So let's get started. Here is a closer look at the stamp set. You can see how adorable the dainty flowers are in this set. There are also a lot of different types of sentiments, and of course it comes with the coordinating dies. So to begin my card, I am using an alcohol-friendly cardstock and an alcohol-friendly ink. I stamped the flowers a few times using my Misty stamping platform. I like using Memento Tuxedo Black ink because it doesn't smear and it dries pretty fast. So if you're planning on using alcohol markers, this ink is one of my top picks. I did have to ink it a few times just to make sure that I got a good impression. Okay, so now it's time for coloring. I like to use Copic markers when coloring, but you can pretty much use whatever coloring mediums that you have on hand. The dainty flowers are so simple in design that you can't really go wrong with the coloring. I started off by coloring the leaves in G85 and G21. I like using at least 2 to 3 color combinations when blending an image to create shadows and lights, and then going in with the colors RV11, R83, RV09, V28, and BV11 for the flowers. After coloring everything in, I am using the coordinating dies and running that through my die cutting machine. I am using a low tack tape to hold all of the dies in place. I know I use a lot of tape, but I tend to have trouble with my dies shifting during die cutting, and that results in cutting error. So just to be safe, I put a lot more than I need. And here's a look at everything after it's been cut, and you can see how lovely and delicate these flowers are, and I really love it. I feel like you could do so many things with the stamp set. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the background. So to create the background scene, I am using another Altenew product, also available in the shop. This stencil is so cool. You can use this for a lot of different things. It is called Sphere Stencil. I placed that over another piece of white cardstock and blended the inks onto the cardstock using a blending brush and Distress Oxide inks. The color of Distress Oxide inks that I am using are Tumble Glass and Salty Ocean. So I'm using the lighter shade, which is Tumble Glass, on the top portion of the sphere and going in with the darker shade on the bottom. Now going in with a wet napkin, I just like cleaning off the stencil before I remove it, just to make sure I don't accidentally smudge the ink around onto anything else on my work surface. I mean, look how cool this looks. It's really nice. Okay, so to create a little more interest onto the actual background scene, I went in with the same ink and just added that onto my work surface and sprayed a little bit of water on top just to dilute that. So what I want to do here is I want to splatter the ink on top of my card panel. And I like doing this because it creates a lot of interest to the background scene without doing too much. I then went ahead and trimmed the card panel to 4 inches by 5¼ inches. Okay, so now it's time to adhere everything together. I'm using a combination of liquid adhesive and foam squares to pop everything into place. I like using the combination of the two because it creates dimension to the overall card design. It makes such a big difference when you do this. Okay, so now to create a little bit more texture onto the card panel, I am going in with some twine and I'm wrapping that towards the bottom half of the card panel. And I tied a little bow where the flowers came together. So I definitely struggled a little bit while creating the bow. I don't know how some card makers make their bows so easily, but I struggled a little bit, but I think it came out okay. Okay, so for the sentiment, I should have done this way beforehand, but sometimes things just slip and you have to work with what you have. I stamped a cute sentiment from the stamp set onto the bottom corner of the panel using black ink. So if you are going to try to replicate this card, stamp the sentiment first before you add on all the floral pieces. So I am using VersaFine ink, and I love this ink because it's nice and dark and it always comes out clean every time I use it. So here I'm pressing down the sentiment, be courageous, and I love that sentiment because I don't have a lot of that in my stash. And I thought that sentiment is a really nice one to have. Okay, so now to finish off the card. I went ahead and placed foam strips on the back side of the card panel. I did also added a strip of tape to secure the twine in place, just because sometimes when you're using twine it kind of shifts around, so I like to add a piece of tape on the back to hold that in place. And then I adhered it to a gray colored cardstock that I trimmed down to 4.5 by 5.25 inches. And lastly, I adhered that to a top folding card base in white. And before I finish everything off, I wanted to add some highlights and details using my white gel pen. I like doing this because it gives the image a little bit of pop. And that's pretty much it. It completes the card. I hope you found some inspiration and get crafty in your craft space. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.